Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Got some more big news to talk about. I have not seen too much in the news that's covering this. This is just one of those little things that's kind of a little blip. And it's probably because they don't want you to think about it too much or be really aware of it, because this is quite serious. And I'm not over dramatizing it. It is very serious. And we want to get into this because this is, I believe, probably a very big step towards the collapse of the US dollar and the full implementation of digital currency here in America. And we're going to get into that here in just a second. Before I get started, I want to mention once again that, folks, if you're trying to stock up on food and you're looking for a good emergency food, this is that freeze-dried stuff that lasts 20, 30 years. There's a link in the description below to My Patriot Supply. They are an excellent company to work with, American-owned, and they have about the best price per calorie product out there. You get a lot more food for the same amount of money than you would at most of these other companies. And they are an excellent way to put back food for a rainy day. And I think most of you know what I mean by that. So if you're interested in that, they have been running some pretty good specials, even considering the increase in food prices. So that link below in the description will get you right to their store. So what I'm talking about here is, it's been announced today, or at least Saudi Arabia announced today, that they are now considering and open to using other currencies or accepting other currencies for their oil. This may not sound like a big deal to a lot of people, and I think part of it is because a lot of people don't fully understand how our money system works here in the United States and around the world. They just don't get it. They just assume that those little pieces of paper in their pocket that have, old dead guys on them, they're just worth the number that's on there. It's just, $5 is $5, and it's worth that. And it's worth that because, well, it always has been, right? And that's what the government says, right? Wrong. Our money and the value of our dollar, of the paper currency, is very, very directly tied to the fact that it is also the petrodollar for this planet. Meaning that up until now, just about everyone on the planet, if they wanted to buy oil for their country, they had to do so in US dollars. That's right. We'll get into that here in just a second. But they had to do so in US dollars. And so because of that, it gave the US dollar importance. Everyone on the planet had to have US dollars. And this was a deal that was made a long time ago with Saudi Arabia. And now Saudi Arabia is backing away from that. There has been signs of this over the past few weeks and months, that Saudi Arabia is starting to back away from this. They've already worked deals with a few other countries specifically, and they are part of the BRICS, conglomerate, where they are in part working with China and Russia and a few other countries in creating another global currency. Well, they've come out today and announced that they will be open to accepting other currencies, most likely the yuan and the ruble, which is the Chinese and Russian currency, for their oil. Now, let's do a little bit of history, because I suspect, I'm not talking down to anyone, but I suspect there's some people that don't quite understand the importance of this. Once upon a time, here in the United States, our money was tied to gold, meaning that you could take your paper currency into a bank and you could exchange it for actual real gold and silver. They would say silver certificates and gold certificates on it. We had to have a certain amount of gold in reserves to back up all the money that we were printing. And that kind of came to an end. In 1971, Richard Nixon took us completely and forever off of the gold standard. The problem is, well, if there's nothing backing your paper currency, then it's not worth anything. In fact, there's probably more value in the labor and the materials that it takes to make the paper currency than what it's actually, said to be worth. And so by 1974, a deal was worked with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia controls OPEC, and OPEC controls the global oil markets. And a deal was worked with them that the United States will use its military might to protect Saudi Arabian oil fields, mostly from Iran, in exchange that all oil transacted on this planet through OPEC, which is pretty much most of it, they would require it to be done in US dollars. And so what this meant is that all these countries all over the world that had to buy oil from OPEC, they now had to at first buy US dollars. So they had to take their money and exchange it for US dollars. They had to purchase US money and then go to Saudi Arabia or other countries within OPEC and purchase their oil. And so it created the petrodollar. A lot of people think that the US dollar's value is tied strictly to the fact that we have this big military, that we can go all over the world. It's only that way because we pledged our military to support and protect Saudi Arabia. That's the key. And so because of that, all these countries said, well, we've already got all this money that's US dollar money, and so we'll just use it also for other trade. And so over the last 5 decades, the petrodollar has also become pretty much the global reserve currency. Most countries, most international businesses, a lot at least, use the US dollar for trade. And so that in itself, and really that's the only thing that has given the US dollar any kind of power, any kind of value. And so, even though the world saw the United States slowly start slipping away, they saw our debt increase, they saw our monetary policies get worse and worse, they thought, well, at least it has to be tied to the petro, and so it must still have some value. But in the last year or two or last few years, we're starting to see other countries show signs that they're not as interested in the United States currency, and because of the ever-increasing spending and debt and poorer, worse and worse monetary policies, we're starting to see little cracks in the system that other countries aren't too keen on using US dollars. And so now Saudi Arabia is saying, you don't have to buy our oil in US dollars. You can use other currencies. And this is going to spell the end, I think. I think that this is opening the door, because up until now, for the last 50 years since we went off the gold standard, the only thing that made our currency have any value was because it was tied to oil. It was the petrodollar. And that day has come to an end. It doesn't mean that countries can't use it. They can continue going on, and I'm sure many will continue using US dollars. But a lot of countries will use other currencies because it's just easier for them. It's cheaper for them. It could save them a little bit of money. And so little by little, we're going to start seeing the prominence of U.S. currency falling. Now, what does this mean for us? Well, it means that in the end, our currency could completely devalue. That's exactly what it means. We have been spending and printing money like crazy people for the last couple of decades, to the point now we're at $32 trillion in debt. We're constantly bailing out everyone, sending $100 billion plus to Ukraine, bailing out, spending this, spending that, new policies. It's just printing more and more money, to the point that they're actually talking about more and more seriously of coining a $1 trillion coin. A coin that has the value of about $1,000, that they're wanting to coin a platinum coin, $1 trillion, claim that it's worth $1 trillion, even though it's only worth $1,000, put it in their vault and say, well, now America can spend another $1 trillion. This is the ridiculousness of what's going on here in the United States, and it's going to come crashing to a halt. It is, and I think it's biblical. I think it's biblical. I think it's exactly what these globalist, Marxist globalists want, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and all of their ilk. This is exactly what they want. And so whether or not Saudi Arabia is doing this because they don't like us anymore and they want to hurt us, or because they're doing it because it's all part of the plan, which is what I suspect, I think that it's going to open the doors even more for the central bank digital currencies. It's interesting because the Fed says that they'll have theirs ready in just a few months, in May or June. And it seems that that's just about enough time for the U.S. dollar to start really losing its prominence, because it's no longer the petrodollar. At some point, it's very likely, I think, that the U.S. dollar could just lose all of its value. And it would be absolutely chaotic. There's not much worse of a scenario that you could come up with at least here in the United States, as our currency completely devaluing. It would be absolutely horrific. The things that could happen and would happen would be pretty bad. Except they're going to say, well, don't worry about it, folks. Yes, we know our money's worthless now. We know you can't go buy, a loaf of bread unless you have $1 million or $10 billion. But now we have this digital currency. I know it's all intrusive. It's going to be controlled. You won't have any privacy whatsoever. Here, take your mark on your head and your hand and get your digital money. I believe this is a good possibility, part of their plan. But this thing of the US dollar no longer being the petrodollar in Saudi Arabia, this is epically big. And I think it's big, and then one way to indicate that it's big is, like I said, the news isn't really talking about it. No one's talking about it. It just came out today, and hardly anyone's even noticing. And they want you to know that. They know that the average person has no clue what that means. They read that headline, and it means nothing to them. They don't understand the vast importance of the US dollar no longer being the global reserve currency in the petrodollar, because that means that the US dollar is on its way out. Folks, this is serious. This is something that should alert you and motivate you even more to get yourselves ready, to get prepped up, and to get in gear with the things that you need to do. It's time to get your houses in order, to prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.